I spent the last 6 months restructuring my AI consulting firm, AB Analytics, in hopes of increasing my profit margins and freeing up more of my time. And I ended up having to lay off a significant chunk of my developers and other staff for AI. Just this morning, I looked at the numbers for how things have changed for me since then. And in this video, I want to share some of the lessons that I've learned running the firm, working with AI in general, and about the future of software development itself. Now, before speaking as a founder, I would like to first speak as a fellow software engineer. If you are thinking of becoming a technical founder or you are currently a mid to senior level developer, then this video will be extremely helpful to you, so make sure you watch it until the end. You've probably already noticed, but we're in this really strange moment right now in 2025, about to get into 2026, where everybody is basically being told to do more with less. I mean, you have the layoffs everywhere, you have AI coming for jobs, and essentially the entire market is kind of telling us to figure it out on your own. And then, of course, let's not forget the people online telling you nonsense about the tech job market. You have half the people saying that it is literally impossible to get a job and it's doomed, and then you have the other half saying that AI is a big bubble and it's useless and it can't replace a human team yet. And I've already talked extensively about why I think neither of these extremes are true, at least for now entering 2026. Things obviously aren't all sunshine and rainbows, but at the same time, they're not nearly as bad as many people make them out to be. It's just the loud minority picking and choosing their battles on what they want to focus on and what they want to talk about, which most often than not is the one that gets the most attention, not necessarily what's true. But regardless, when I made the decision to restructure AB Analytics, it was, as mentioned before, primarily because of two reasons. First and foremost, I wanted to free up more of my time to be able to do things such as this YouTube channel, and also I wanted to increase my profit margins as they weren't doing too hot. And the second thing was that there was this pervasive myth going around that AI was useless. And if you're a technical founder listening to this or a senior developer, you should really pay attention to this next portion. Because this whole notion of you can do more with less because of AI, it's one big ridiculous myth if you don't know what you're doing. So that's the caveat. When I first stripped down my team, it was basically a few core developers left and the AI tools. And I told myself that we would move really fast, we would be able to use AI, I would just have to teach the senior devs a few things here and there, and basically we could vibe code our way through anything. And initially, I mean, it sort of worked. To be honest with you, it worked pretty damn well. We had prototypes and MVPs that looked really cool, and we were able to get them done in a matter of days. It was kind of like magical. And it felt like we would be able to make these massive applications, platforms, AI workflows over a few weeks if we really put our minds to it. We were going crazy thinking we can build entire hospital EHRs in weeks. And it took around 6 weeks or so for this honeymoon period to end, and we got hit with cold hard reality. When we went from prototyping into something in production, meaning something that we wanted to actually show clients or use that had some real operational value, it became immediately clear that this was not going to work with the way we had it. And let me explain a very specific scenario here because I think the details matter in this case. Our first really big multi-six-figure project with this new structure was building out a tool for specifically freight companies. Now, the premise sounds simple on paper, but basically it's this. Whenever these freight companies would post a load on a load board, their phones would essentially start going off. You would have hundreds of brokers and drivers calling that one specific number immediately to try and book it. And it's basically a race, and in this case, speed is everything. So we were tasked with building an AI receptionist to be able to handle this chaos, essentially to be able to answer potentially 500 calls coming in at once, vet the people who are calling, and actually allow them to book the load based on the pricing they give. Now, if you're producing this code that is ultimately responsible for talking to real human beings and handling real life situations and handling real money, and you're trying to move at extreme speed, well, you're ultimately just taking whatever the AI puts onto you without even checking it. And that was essentially the definition of vibe coding that we were doing. We prompted the AI as quickly as possible. So something like, okay, answer the phone, talk to the driver, book it. Obviously, we went into more detail. And in a test environment, whatever we did, it worked phenomenally. It sounded great. We tested it, it worked. But whenever we put it into production, into the real world, we realized that we messed up bad. The AI didn't understand the nuance of telephony latency. It didn't understand that when 50 people call a SIP trunk, at the same exact millisecond, the lines jam. So we had drivers and other brokers calling, saying hello, and the AI was taking up to 4 seconds to process the audio and actually give them a reply back. And those 4 seconds, you guys have been on phone calls, it's an eternity. If I hear silence for 4 seconds, I think it's going to be a scam, or I'm just going to put down the phone. So they would hang up and we would lose deals. And even worse, sometimes the AI would hallucinate rates. So a driver would ask for, let's say, more money or try to counter negotiate, and the AI, trying to be helpful, would literally just agree based on the loose prompt that we gave it. It would just say, sure. And it booked drivers for money that it shouldn't have, essentially costing the client money. And we barely scraped by on this project. It was extremely stressful, it was extremely messy, and the idea of just having AI take these prompts or even really detailed specifications simply didn't work. And we were really trying to vibe code our way into a production app. And what we saw eventually is that, well, the number of errors that we were dealing with, the number of bugs that were kept getting back to us, the number of broken things that we're spending extra time to fix were literally slowing us down. And in fact, we were moving slower than we had previously. So at some point, I realized that, okay, we have to rip this apart. And this is where I learned the most important lesson of the last 6 months when it comes to utilizing AI in your business, or essentially as a software engineer. Without a technical CEO or a technical lead or a technical somebody who is good at operations, you will fail. So for our next major set of projects, we actually started working with personal injury law firms. And for reference, this is pretty high stakes stuff. You have sensitive client data. You can't mess this up like we did with the freight stuff. So because of the scars we had from that project, I decided personally I'm going to be involved with this specific project. And I decided to change the workflow completely. I started getting involved as basically a technical CEO, CTO, COO, combination of pretty much everything. And the plan was that I wasn't going to ask AI how to build it, I was going to tell it what to build. So I had to become an architect. For example, we are using Redis for the queue, so don't drop the leads. And if the webhook fails, here is exactly what you should do. Here is the exact retry logic. And I wasn't necessarily writing the syntax because the AI would do that instantly, but I was now enforcing the logic and making sure that the little stuff was taken care of. And once we made that shift, the numbers went absolutely through the roof. So let's talk about what the actual numbers were the morning of that I checked today, because I think this is what matters the most when it comes to utilization of AI in a business, or essentially as a software engineer. So first and foremost, I want to talk about onboarding paying clients. This used to be one of the biggest bottlenecks in the firm. In the old days, signing a client was a pretty big headache. So we would close a deal, and then we would have this awkward couple-day dance where we're sending emails back and forth, trying to get them onboarded onto Slack. We're manually drafting specific contracts, changing small little stuff here and there. We're chasing them for their data credentials, for their APIs, and all this mumbo jumbo. It was very manual, it was slow, and it killed the momentum in some specific cases. But now, that's pretty much completely automated. So when we close a client now, the first thing that happens is we have an AI note taker that takes the transcript of our sales calls, extracts the specific deliverables, and generates an actual custom contract based on our previous iterations of the best contracts we've used. It sends it out for signature via DocuSign. It follows up automatically if they don't sign within 24 hours. And once they sign, it then continues to chase them based on the requirements that are needed for that project, be it API keys, be it specific data, whatever the case is. And I used to pay a separate, dedicated project manager to do all of this stuff. And since it was human, sometimes a project manager would forget. Now the AI does all this instantly for me. And this brings me to the other side of AI, that nobody really talks about. So everyone is obsessed with, oh, AI writing code, this and that. But for me, honestly, the biggest margin unlock in my business as a software engineer utilizing it was using AI for SOPs and operations. Don't get me wrong, it's extremely helpful for coding, but SOPs and operations were really the bread and butter. Personally, running a consulting firm requires a mountain of documentation. You have your standard operating procedures, so your specific SOPs, you have your compliance documents you need, you have your weekly reports. These are all things that nobody wants to write, but it's stuff that is extremely necessary because you cannot scale without it. And I certainly didn't want to have to deal with this. So now what we do is we use AI to run the entire backend. If I, let's say, come upon a problem for the first time, and I don't just fix it anymore and move on. I actually talk through the fix as I'm fixing the problem on a recording, I drop it into the system, and the AI generates a formatted SOP document tailored to that problem. It updates our internal knowledge base, and it even drafts sort of like a weekly update and emails it to the client explaining exactly what we did and what happened if it's pertaining to that specific project. So, and it also handles the follow-ups as well. If a client is supposed to send us data by, let's say, Tuesday, and they miss that deadline, I myself don't have to remember to email them. My employees don't either. The system knows, and it nudges them. And it's polite, and it's persistent. And it also keeps the project moving. And last but not least, most importantly, my margins. So my overhead plummeted, and this was the single biggest cost when it came to running my firm. And this, most of the time, is the single most expensive line item on any consulting P&L. It's labor. By removing the developers who were essentially just doing the ticket-taking work and actually keeping only the absolute core developers that I needed, the architects and the seniors, so the high-level talent, my profit margins significantly increased. I am no longer worrying about burn rate in the same exact way. I can take on smaller projects because I know my margin will be high. And weirdly enough, firing the team made me a way better boss to the people that I actually kept, because I now wasn't spending 20 hours a week or 10 hours a week managing, any type of disagreements or missed things that the team did. I was now able to spend significantly more time with each employee on a much more personal level. So the relationship went from transactional management, especially back when I was using contractors, to more of a strategic partnership with our full-time employees now. I want to really stress something. This will only work because I am technical. I have a software engineering background. If you are a non-technical founder and you try to build, for example, the freight inbound system, you will 99.9% fail. You won't know why the calls are dropping. You won't know why your AI hallucinated and how to even fix the hallucination. You won't know what latency or concurrency means. And you will build a house of cards that will one day just crumble. And frankly speaking, bridging that gap, so taking your technical experience and turning it into a high margin business, this is exactly what I teach in Code to CEO. So I built Code to CEO specifically for mid to senior level engineers who are tired of just being a cog in a machine. We teach you how to stop just writing code and actually start building a business where you are the architect and the AI is your workforce. You already have the skills that 99% of the population wishes they had. All you need to do is you just need the right playbook to be able to turn that into equity and an empire rather than just a salary. So if you want to stop taking tickets and you want to start building your own thing, taking control over your time and future, then click the first link in the description down below. Now, I want to talk about the other side of this, because the reason I felt comfortable firing my team in the first place and running this with fewer people wasn't just because the AI tools are good. It's because the alternative, hiring people, has become a complete and utter nightmare. But it's not for the reason you think. Most people might cite that people are cheating a lot, blah, 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 blah. But before I pulled the trigger on the layoffs, I actually tried to hire some senior help for these exact projects that I was gonna work on. Because as mentioned, we were taking on bigger and bigger projects. And at this point in time, I think we had interviewed about 3 people. And I wanna be clear, anybody we interview, since it is literally AI consulting firm, we allow the people to use AI during the interview. In fact, we demand that they're able to use AI in the first place. So if it's, let's say, a developer, I'll tell them, hey, you can use Cursor, Cloud Code, whatever the heck you need to be able to do whatever it is you do. I don't care if you write the syntax. I don't care if you prompt AI to write the syntax. I don't care how you solve the problem. I just need you to be able to solve the problem. And this is where I sort of started seeing the real issue in people. It wasn't that they were cheating. Even if they were cheating, as long as you can get the job done, I don't care. It's the results that matter at the end of the day. But it's that most software developers had no idea how to actually work with the AI. They treated the AI like a magic 8-ball. They would literally copy paste my question into the prompt and pray for a working answer. And I remember one guy specifically. He had 7 years of back-end experience. And I asked him about the exact freight thing, the inbound call handling system. And I asked a simple architectural question. I said, okay, let's assume the AI agent is answering the call. How can we handle the state if the WebSocket drops the connection mid-call? And I remember I was watching him, waiting for an answer, and he didn't even stop to think about what I was asking. He literally just exactly what I asked, put that into the AI. He just typed it out. I remember asking him what he typed. I think he said how to handle WebSocket drops in Python or something along those lines. And he read me back the generic answer that the AI literally gave him. Like word for word how AI talks, that's what he gave back to me. And it was something alongside of like using a heartbeat mechanism. I don't even remember any nowadays, but I pressed him on that. I'm like, okay, is this synchronous or asynchronous? How does this affect the latency for the driver, waiting on the other end of the call, right? And he basically had no answer. He froze completely in place. Because I realized that he had no mental model of what he was building. He was simply just a proxy for the actual AI. Like there was no difference in me using the AI or him. It was kind of like he was middlemaning for both of us. What's the point of him if I can just talk to the AI and I can prompt the AI better? So this is the problem that I'm seeing. Most software developers, it's not that they are not using AI. It's that they lack the fundamental knowledge to verify if the AI is even right, let alone use it properly. That's why many people don't use it at all, because they get pissed off because it's user error. They don't know how to properly use it. And they don't know what they don't know. If the AI suggests a library that hasn't been updated in, let's say, 3 years, they're still going to install it. If the AI suggests a database that's going to break under a certain amount of load, the software engineers will still implement it. Okay? So this was the biggest unlock that I realized. If I hire this specific individual who might be a great software engineer but has no clue how to use AI, I'm going to pay them a full salary to essentially be a slow, inefficient interface for the same tools that I already have and that I can teach my team already to use. So personally, I can prompt AI better than they can because I understand the architecture way better. So why would I pay for that overhead? And I know that our jobs are changing quite dramatically. But honestly, I think the biggest change out there is really with expectations for software engineers. I think now, more than ever, developers have to know where the AI hype ends and where reality begins. Developers have to know what AI is capable of and what comes down to user error and what comes down to actual functionality. You have to help the CEOs and the non-technical people of this world understand the reality of using these tools. And that specific gap, being able to connect the technical to the non-technical, is exactly what I break down in my newsletter down below. If you want the exact playbook on how to bridge that divide, check the second link in the description down below. As always, thank you so much for watching and have a good one.